Welcome to the Everyday Engineer. Today we're going to be pouring a concrete slab and turning this into something nice. So stick around and we'll learn a thing or two. So first things first, we have to get all this stuff out of there. We're going to have to rip out that box, rip out some slate tiles that are down there, dig around and get to it. Alright, we got the concrete ready to go. Got the gravel laid down. So I dug up what was there. I had a lot of big rocks, so it took a little bit longer than I thought. You want to have mostly small rocks. It helps better with the drainage because then it doesn't allow for standing pools of water, which is not really great for concrete. So the next step is to level out the gravel, put the box down, the form, and then we start cracking open the bags and pouring the concrete. Now with this, it's a small pad, so it's not real critical that it's all that square for the form. If I was doing a much bigger pad, I'd want to actually have set stakes. Right now I'm just using some rebar, just hammer it into the ground, put some string around it. That way I can actually follow the form, so I know that my box will fit in there to be able to level it out with the gravel. So you want it to tip away from the house. That way if it rains, the water can run away from your structure, because if you put it level, the water will sit. If you put it towards your structure, it will just run into the structure. I'm tying it into the house because over the years it will begin to settle, and you don't want that to settle like this, so that way it's leaning towards your house. So we're going to slope it a little bit away. Alright, so mold's all squared away. We are good to go. Gravel's tamped down. Gotta do leaf duty because it keeps going into the mold and you don't want any organic matter below it. So we're gonna open up the first bag, get that mixed up, and pour it. You'll want to follow the instructions. So what I've done is I've measured out the optimal amount of water that the bag says and marked a line on my bucket. That way I could just go with the hose, fill it up to that line, and any more or any less I'll be able to add, or well, less I can't really do, but I'll just add some more powder at that point. But let's open up the first few bags and get to pouring. All right, so got the first 2 bags poured over here. So took up about maybe an inch of space for 160 pounds. Takes up a lot less than you'd think. So I probably should have grabbed 3 feet rebar and chopped it down a little bit with my cutting wheel, but I have my tape measure with me, and I grabbed 2 feet rebar. So I just tied them together using some wire ties. These little things, you can pick them up for a few bucks. If you have a truck or a big SUV that you could fit that wire grid in, use that. That's plenty strong. Rebar's a little bit overkill for a slab this size. But you just tie them together, put them in. You want it to be close to the edge. I can't really do that. I've got a piece of rebar in the building. I don't know if you can see that. In the building, I drilled it in on each side, and that'll help support this side cracking like that. And this will hopefully support cracking. Hold for wind. Hopefully it'll support the slab enough that it doesn't crack and keeps it to the building so it doesn't sink. But we got 2 bags in there. I don't know if I'll need the rest of the bags. I might need like 4 or 5 more. But I'm gonna mix those up and see where it gets us. And we'll cut to that. So, poured in the rest of the concrete, cleaned off my tools, screeded it with the board by just shimmying it, filled in the gaps where necessary. Just gonna take the float, skim it over the top, take the edging tool and run it around the sides, and we're good to go. While it's drying, let's take a quick engineering break to explain concrete. Concrete's crazy. So it's only got 4 ingredients, but those 4 ingredients work so well together. When you mix up the 4 ingredients, you've got your stones and aggregate, your filler, your sand, water, and then your Portland cement. They form what's called an exothermic reaction that generates heat. And that heat and that chemical reaction binds everything together to form the concrete. So you can actually get away with forming concrete in a slightly colder environment for the first night, because that exothermic reaction gives off enough heat that the water won't freeze. But the second night, that exothermic reaction is not as strong, so you do risk the water freezing, then expanding, and then cracking the concrete. Now, concrete's very brittle, so if the water freezes a little bit, it'll crack. That's why we add rebar or even wire mesh to concrete. We're borrowing that rebar's ductility in the concrete. So instead of the concrete taking all of the stress of walking or machinery or vehicles, the rebar is stretching since the concrete can't. And you can get really complex with concrete if you start to go into the mixology of it. You know, if you have X percentage of aggregate to Y percentage of Portland cement, you might get a more crack resistant concrete, but it's got a lower overall strength. As an example, that might not be exactly true with that ratio, because that is way more complex than I have researched into concrete. But that's just a shadowing of concrete. It's a crazy deep dive if you want to get into it, but that's just the basics. Now back to the rest of the video. So I came outside to see how it was drying, and it was pretty good. But I was trying to move all the concrete inside that I hadn't mixed yet, and looks fine. Yeah, that's a big oof. Now I gotta clean that up. So hopefully it didn't do too much damage to the slab. So I'll clean that up, let it dry a little bit, and we'll see. All right, so it's been a few days. Concrete's cured. Let's take a look. So what you get with a broom finish. Now, I'm going to take some concrete polishing pads. Just gonna use 50 grit and polish the top of this. They're wet polishing, so you need a little bit of water. And I don't want to go higher than 50 grit, just because I want this to stay rough when I'm walking on it, so if it gets wet or anything, you won't be slipping off if you come out here in the rain. So, gonna sand it up, then just need to put a sealer coat on it, and that should be it. Alright, finished washing it off. There we go. Nice and smooth. Got a few little pebbles on there still. I'll have to sweep it. But otherwise, I think that's a successful job for my first ever concrete pour. So, give it a try yourselves. It's not that bad. Thanks for watching.